Hey everyone, welcome to DevRunner. My name is Paul. I'm an endurance runner and an RRCA certified running coach. And this is Subscriber Spotlight, where I have conversations with inspiring runners to motivate you on your running journey. My guest today is a runner from the United Kingdom. His YouTube channel delivers ultra running adventures, beautiful views, thoughtful gear reviews, and runner stories. So it's my pleasure to welcome the host of Time on Feet to the show. Hey, Ben. How you doing today? Thank you for being here.
Hi, Paul. Thanks for having me along. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure having you here. You've been just delivering such great content for so long now, and I've been a fan since you've really gotten started. So it's absolutely my pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you.
Cool. So just to jump right in, Ben, I'm hoping that you can just give everybody just a brief bio, who you are, where you're from, anything that you want people to know about you, like right off the bat.
Sure, yeah. So I live in the south coast of England, so in a place called Brighton. And I wasn't born around here, so I was born like just to the west of London, but moved down here about 3 or 4 years ago. So I'm mainly, running along a place called the South Downs. So we've got some really nice kind of like hilly trails nearby. And I've been running probably for about 7 or 8 years in total, but I kind of split that into two parts. So early on when I started running, it was just doing it maybe once or twice a week. And then after we had a number of lockdowns, so following the pandemic, I got much more into running and training and getting into trails, marathons, ultras. So yeah, I kind of split my running into two phases. So yeah, the second phase probably started around 2021, and that's when I really got into it. The other thing I'd just say is that I'm also a teacher, so I teach philosophy and religious studies. So what I teach, what I do for my job rather is nothing to do with running. So it's very much separate. So it's kind of I have two lives: a kind of teacher by day and trail runner by night.
That's wonderful. That's awesome. Yeah, it's funny because, yeah, I'm a programmer by day myself. So running is like the physical outlet after a day of just kind of, keeping it here. But
Definitely.
very cool. I like the fact that you kind of started off slow and just kind of got to know running in a more casual way before you jumped into, more heavy training and getting into racing more heavily. But I'm hoping you can give us a little bit more detail on your athletic background and go back like even pre-running, like just to give people a better picture.
So yeah, I wasn't really into running growing up. So I'm 32 now. When I was a kid, I'd say I hated running. I really didn't like it. So it's been quite a transformation. And if I would have told my younger self that I'd really like running now, I would have thought that was crazy. Would have thought, what is this person saying? But I was really into football. So I liked playing football at primary school and in secondary school as well. So up to the age of about maybe 14 or 15. But yeah, running I saw as more of a chore, I suppose, because it was often used as a punishment when we were doing like
Yes.
PE or physical education at school. They'd make you run like laps of the field, or sometimes you'd do cross country, and there'd be the kids who were very good and naturally it, and that wasn't me. And then the rest of us would kind of muck around, and people would kind of push each other in the pond as you ran past it and things like that. So yeah, I wasn't really into running at that point. Um, but I liked exercise. I liked being outside. So it's only later on really that I discovered a love for running. Initially, like I said, it was a stage of where I was doing it amongst like other sports. So I was doing a bit of swimming, bit of cycling here and there. I did some boxing training for a while too. So for about a
Oh,
year, not competing in it, but just doing the training, doing pad work, sparring, and things like that. So yeah, that's where I started to sense, oh, actually, there might be something to this running thing, and maybe I can enjoy it and not necessarily see it like I did when I was a younger child.
gotcha.
Um,
That's really
yeah,
interesting. And I really appreciate the fact that you were more well-rounded in the athletic field, when you were younger, that you got to sort of experience more things than just kind of jumping right into one discipline and just kind of hammering it. It's funny because so many of the like, the pro athletes, the really elite runners, so many of them suffer from the fact that they got into running earlier, they were pushed into it, and they never got to experience everything else, and it's almost like they burn out so early. Um, so I'm curious, like you were doing of those other things, and I fully appreciate the idea of running being almost a punishment. It's funny, yeah, but my high school experience with athletics was exactly the same way. I ran cross country in grade 9, and just it was not for me. It was, because it was being pushed as sort of like, come on, faster, further, and there was no fun involved. But how did you turn the corner? Like how did running go from sort of like this thing that was being done as a punishment to something that you actually enjoyed?
Yeah, I think it was that I started to see like benefits from doing it regularly, but also using it as a way to get headspace, I think, and just get out there, and another way to to exert yourself, and then also get time away from things, because I think that with our lives, they're often very noisy and there's lots going on. But the rhythm of running and being able to go out there, especially like with trail running for me, it just gave me a real sense of, oh no, actually this is a way to get away from it all, and um, and do something where your legs are ticking over, you're feeling the fresh air, and yeah, just being able to get away from things in that way. So I'd say that was a big change. But also, I think with running, I found that as I was doing it more, the bounds of what was conceivable changed very quickly. So whereas before I would have thought I couldn't imagine running for like more than 2 minutes without stopping. And then you do it bit by bit, and then it changes. And then you think, oh, maybe I could do a 5K. And then you do that, and you think, oh, well, what's the next step? And could I bring my time down, or could I do this more regularly? So I think it was that, like seeing those improvements, and I think that gave me confidence in other parts of my life. I thought this could have applications in other places too.
Great point. That's a great point. Yeah, it's amazing the way running transforms people, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. Just, yeah, exactly. You see that you can make improvements just by being consistent, and it can change things like everywhere in every part of your life. Really great point. Um,
Definitely, and I'd say now that I almost feel like running's a necessity for me. Like if I don't do it, I feel out of sorts. I don't feel quite right.
yeah,
So I yearn for running, and it just feels like something which is really important for me now.
exactly. Yeah, for me, it's almost like a meditation. I can't function properly without having that time to just sort of sort through the day. But
Having said that, I do also realize that with us as runners, you have to also try and make sure that your identity isn't completely running, like your sport identity at least, because I've had times when I've been injured for a longer period of time, and then
mhm.
that can lead to problems if you're like, well, if I can't run, then what else can I do? So I've tried over the last couple of years to do a bit more in terms of other types of sport, or cross training at least, so that I know if I couldn't do running for whatever reason, then I could dip into these other forms of exercise as well.
That's yeah, that great wisdom right there. I'll tell you what. Yeah, the way I balance that is, like when I'm in a marathon cycle like I am now, it seems like all I do is run and think about running. But
Yeah.
as soon as I get past it, I found that a healthy way to sort of counterbalance that is, even though I'm going to continue running so long as I don't get injured, I'll bring it down. We'll do some 5K work. We'll do some mile work where you can just bring the mileage down and just kind of live a more balanced life. So yeah, point well taken, sir. Um, I'd like to get a little bit more from you, like get a little bit more in depth with your running background, and have you share what you consider the highlights of your running journey so far.
Yeah, I think my main highlights are probably from the last couple of years where I've been training for things more consistently. The first one is going to be the first marathon that I ran, which actually I just did solo along Brighton seafront, because I'd initially signed up for a marathon. It got cancelled and then postponed because of the pandemic. So
Mhm.
in the end, I thought, well, I've trained for this. I'm just going to go out and run it. So I just went on my own along the seafront, and then run up and down until I got to 26.2 miles. So that I feel was probably one of my highlights, like early on. So that was back in April 2021.
Okay.
Um, and then following that, I did my first ultra in June of that year. So a couple of months later, kind of off the back of the marathon training, which yeah, again I feel like was a big achievement for me. And then last year, so 2022, the main things there was doing my first 50-mile race, and that was organised by a group called Centurion Running, so like a race company we've got here in the UK. Super organisers, really really good. But that was along the North Downs Way. So near where I live is the South Downs Way, and then a bit further north, not kind of North England, but just up into Surrey, you've got like the North Downs Way, and that was my first 50-miler. It went really really well. So I didn't know what to expect going into it. Like the longest distance I'd done before that was I think like a 37 or 38-mile ultra. But this one was
Still
hillier,
amazing.
and I didn't really know what to expect, but I had an idea of roughly what I was going for on the day. For me with ultras, the main thing is always like getting over the line. That's number one. Just finishing, whether that's crawling or rolling or however you have to do it. Just getting over that line. But I also in my head had an A goal target, which was to go sub 9 hours. And in the end, I managed to do that. So I came out in 8 hours 40, and I got a top 20 finish as well. So I was really pleased with that out of a couple of hundred runners. So yeah, that's probably my biggest highlight of last year. And then like later on in the year, the other 50-mile race I've done was a hillier one, which is definitely the toughest race I've done so far. I went into it slightly naively because I didn't realize how many steps there were. So it was a
Oh,
10
yeah,
mile.
I know what you're referring to. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and it was a hilly one. So that was the Cockthorne 50 miler. But yeah, the steps, I needed to train for the steps more. So it was pretty killer. I ended up coming out in like, it was almost 10 and a half hours, I think it took me.
Oh,
And
amazing.
it's pretty much, it was like starting in the dark, finishing in the dark, which I hadn't had experience of before. So that one, I was just pleased to get it done, really. So yeah, I think those are probably the highlights in terms of like races. But the other thing I would say that I feel has been a good thing that I've achieved over the last few years is actually going out for runs when I haven't necessarily felt like it or haven't wanted to, but then have appreciated it after. So as a kind of general thing that I feel I've achieved well over the past few years is just getting out the door really and sometimes when your motivation is low, being able to get out there and then still get the benefits of the fresh air and get the thinking time. So yeah, I'd say races, but also that just as getting out there and being able to run when you don't feel 100%.
Absolutely. Yeah. You make another great point right there. I think one of the ways that running benefits us mentally is that sort of discipline. I think, when you head out the door on the days that are just, the weather is not there or you're just tired, kind of mental discipline really carries over into every other part of life. So again, very, very wise words, sir.
And I think the thing I try to say to myself is that like motivation kind of ebbs and flows, and you can't necessarily control motivation. I think the mistake that I probably made earlier on when I was training for things was that I tried to search for this abstract thing called motivation, whereas now all I try to do is just establish good habits, and often motivation comes from that.
Well
But if you
said.
focus on motivation itself, then often you can't find it. It goes elsewhere. So I just think to myself, well, even if I've got low motivation, what I do is go out for a run. That's what I do. It's part
One
of
of
the
the
schedule. I have to stick to it.
really brilliant stuff. That's going to be sort of, I think I'll cut this out and make that a short just to advertise this. Really, really smart. So Ben, I just want to ask you, what motivates you running wise now?
So I suppose a few things. I mean, firstly, a love of the trails. I just love getting out there and exploring. So actually, one of the things that I want to do this year is to explore new trails. We've got a number of trails around the UK that I haven't explored yet. Well, a huge amount. I've mainly focused around the South Coast here. So yeah, just to get out there and explore, I think that's a big thing. And also to push the boundaries in terms of like the distance that I'm doing, and also to get more comfortable with longer distance. I feel like I'm getting better with like knowing the ebb and flow of like 50K races, because I've done a good number of those now. 50 miles, I'm like getting better at experiencing. Well, I've done two. I feel like I've got a bit more of a sense of how they work, but I need to get more experience, I think. And then later this year, so in June, I've got my first 100-mile race. So that's kind of the big goal for this year that I'm working towards. That's like my A race. And that's in June. And it is the South Downs Way 100, which is organised by Centurion Running, who I mentioned before. And that goes along the length of the South Downs Way. So from Winchester, more kind of west of England, and then to Eastbourne in the east. So that I think will be it's a special race for me because one, it's on the South Downs Way, which I love running on, and they're not too far from my house. So actually, I live quite near the 65-mile point of the 100-miler, so it's perfectly placed for training. But then also, about I think it maybe 7 or 8 years ago, I walked the length of the South Downs Way over the space of 7 days. So I like the idea of like going back and doing it. And I mean, the cutoff's 30 hours, so I've got 30 hours in which to do this race. But yeah, I like that idea of going back and this time trying to do it in like a much more condensed period of time.
It's really amazing. It's really amazing to even, be able to talk about covering those kind of distances. As a road guy who's never experienced more than 26.2 miles in one shot, like even a 50K sounds just boggling to me. So hats off to you for trying to go even further. It's just amazing.
Yeah, so the thing I would say is that with like 50K or ultras, generally they're just a very different kind of event, because lots of it we're walking for it, and then there's a kind of picnic going on during it too. You've got to kind of pick up food and nutrition as you go. So I would say that actually some 50Ks that I've done are easier than road marathons. Because with road marathons, if you're going for a time, you're kind of pushing yourself and you're trying to really neatly hit those splits. Whereas in 50K, the culture of the race is often different. That like even if you're someone who's going for a certain time, inevitably because of hills and how you're feeling and getting nutrition on, you have to adjust more. And I think that there's more of a kind of cultural acceptance in it that people do adjust to it. So yeah, it's a different kind of event. And I know like with the 100-miler that I do, it's going to be a huge amount of walking. So actually something I need to get good at is hiking, really, which I've done a fair bit of in certainly the second 50-miler that I did last year, because that was much more hilly. So I was probably walking or hiking like overall about maybe, I don't know, 2 hours, maybe an hour and a half or 2 hours of the race. So yeah, it's just a very different kind of event altogether. But funny enough, like although the distance is much more for some of the races I've done, I would find it much harder to run a good 10K time on the road.
It's just a different
that kind
of
of
pain.
suffering I'm not used to. Where definitely, yeah, where your lungs feel like they're kind of on the edge, you're feeling sick, and yeah, that I mean, when I tried to do a decent 10K time for me last year, and I was reminded of that. Like it's just a kind of different kind of challenge and different kind of pain that I wasn't really as used to, as opposed to like slogging it out over a long period, hours and hours, which I think I'm probably more suited to.
Gotcha. Now, one of the things I really want to point out, Ben, and as a coach, it's very important to me to try to take every opportunity to hammer this, point home. You can't be an ultra runner. You can't really be a successful runner at any distance unless you're doing strength training, cross training to keep your whole body strong, to put up with the massive demands of covering those kind of distances, at very demanding speeds. So I'm hoping you can share with everyone the kind of strength work and cross training core work that you do.
Sure, yeah. So I used to neglect strength training quite badly early on when I was getting into ultra. So back in like mid 2021, but now I do a kind of like irreducible minimum policy where I say like this is the minimum amount of strength training that I'm doing each week. So for me, it's like two 20-minute sessions that focus on different things. So one's more about core and agility, and then the other one is more focused on like ankles, knees, hips, glutes, things like that. So
Gotcha.
that those are kind of my absolute minimum each week. So two 20-minute sessions, so not massive, but just making sure that that's there. And on top of that, anything's a bonus. And then I also do drills every week as well. And that's I did that this morning actually, just before park run. And yeah, that was mainly looking at things like what do you call it? This is where I'm not good with the lingo. Like when more kind of explosive stuff.
Oh,
So where you're kind of
biometrics.
biometrics, yeah, that's the one.
Gotcha.
So that's the approach I go for. I've started using the kettlebell this year too,
Oh, good for
which
you.
I've really got into that. So before I was just doing body weight exercises, but I really like how versatile the kettlebell is and how you can use it for lots of different things. So yeah, that's what my strength and conditioning looks like. And then aside from that, in terms of cross training, plenty of walking, and I do swimming every so often as well. So we've got the sea about maybe 10 minutes walk from where I live, and it's a bit cold at the moment. It's about 6 or 7 degrees in there. So I haven't been going quite as much as I would like, but at least when it gets a bit warmer, I try to save it to myself. Once a week minimum when I can. I went the other day in the sea and I managed about 10 minutes, but it was freezing. Yeah, really cold.
I've seen some of your videos where you're doing that, and I always just shake my head like, wow, he's really putting himself through something. Wow.
Why?
Very,
Yeah.
very cool, very cool. So, Ben, I'm going to switch things up a little bit here, change directions, and I want to know what got you started, what got you interested in starting in YouTube in the first place.
Yeah, so I kind of fell into it. So when I did my first ultra last year before last, so in 2021, I thought, well, seeing as I'm going to put myself through this kind of pain and discomfort, I thought I may as well film it, so I can look back on it, and other people can gain some kind of sick pleasure from seeing me go through such a horrific experience. So yeah, I kind of thought, well, I'll do that to start with, and then from there, I set myself a challenge of doing a video a week for a year. And I just thought, well, I'll see where it goes. And I don't have like a film background, but I just thought, well, if I'm going to be going through trying, to up the distance or do different running challenges, I'll share what I find along the way in terms of kit or training tips or things like that. So although I don't have any running expertise or qualifications, I thought I'll just share as an ordinary person, what it's like to be setting myself challenges, going through training and trying to get involved in different kinds of running.
Yeah, well, I mean, let me say hats off to you because you definitely don't come across as sort of like just your average, runner. I mean, everything you present is very well thought out, whether it be your product reviews, your shoe reviews, whether it be the way you approach a training cycle for a longer race. It's like I learned so much from you as a road guy who's like always promising that one day I'm going to get to ultra running, but I still haven't pulled the trigger. But I feel like I'm kind of closer to being able to do it in a smart way simply because I watch you go about it in such an intelligent way. So hats off
Oh,
to
thank
you,
you.
and just keep on going in that direction because it's great stuff, Ben.
Oh, thanks very much. I'd love to see you get into the ultra scene, Paul. I'd absolutely love that.
Yeah, I think I would enjoy it like quite a bit. And what scares me is
Yeah,
that once I take that leap, I'll never come back to the roads. So
there's no going back. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I know too many people who absolutely love trail running and ultra running that say, yeah, I would never go back to trying to kill myself in a 10K or a marathon type of thing. So yeah, I'll get there eventually, though, I promise. But sir, let's play a little game here, a little 3 or 4 questions where I'm going to present you with 2 options. And I just very quickly want you to choose the one. You don't have to justify your answer unless, of course, you want to, but we'll just get through them as fast as we can, and then we'll just change subjects again. So
Cool. Sounds good.
yeah, I call this this or that. So just here we go. I think the first one's going to be very easy, but roads or trails?
Road. Joking. Trail.
Okay. Training or racing?
Training.
Glad to hear that. Heart rate training or training by feel?
Training by feel.
Love it, love it, love it, love it. That's exactly the way your videos and your channel comes across, is you're very much an intuitive runner. Like you know yourself well, and that's what you let guide you. So very cool.
Yeah,
Very cool.
if I had the channel name Time on Feet and said heart rate, that might be, you know, slight friction.
Gotcha. Very good point. So, Ben, I want to get into a little bit more of a philosophical direction now. I just want to ask you how running has changed your life for the better.
Yeah, in a huge amount of ways. I think it partly goes back to the thing I mentioned early on, where with running, the bounds of what you think is conceivable can change quite quickly, and that gives you greater confidence, I think, in other areas of your life. So I think I've been more willing to take risks and do different things as a result of running. So that's the first thing I would say. Aside from that, the community side of it, like I think such a good running community, both in real life, so to speak, in terms of like around park run, we have here in the UK, you can meet people there. Around some of the running shops we've got locally, they do different events. And then at races, and different like meetup groups. We've got a group called Sussex Trail Runners here in Sussex, and we meet up monthly and do group runs together. So yeah, I think the other thing it's given me then is, aside from the confidence thing, is also just that the feel for the community. And then of course, you have that online too. I think we have such a strong like running YouTube community, and it's amazing that we can connect up with people who are doing all different kinds of running, and in lots of different parts of the world as well.
Yeah, it's
So
really
yeah,
amazing.
it's so good, and I love as well, just on YouTube, I love like the DIY nature of it, that you can put together a video and then just put it up there. So I like that it's that way, that it's not that you necessarily have to get like a TV channel to agree to show your film or anything like this. It's just that you do it and then it's up there. So I really like that immediacy of it.
Exactly. Yeah, it's wonderful. And to just add to that final point, I love how inclusive, how positive the running community on YouTube is, because there, as I'm sure everybody knows who watches YouTube, there are vast swaths of subject matter that attract very negative audiences. And I was so happily surprised when I started on YouTube myself, in the running community, of how accepting and how positive everybody is. So yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, Ben. And one little addendum before we move on, and I forget to mention this, which I'm so happy about. When you mentioned parkrun, I know that's sort of it got its start, as far as I know, in the UK. And I was aware of 5 or 6, but not even a dozen parkruns that were available in the United States. But we just got our first one in Charlotte, so I'm going to be running it sometime next
Yes.
month. So I'm just so excited.
So has it started already, or is it about to start?
Yeah, no, it's actually established. I think they got started like
Wow.
3 months ago. It's in the Sugar Creek area of Charlotte. So I'm really excited to run my first one.
Ah, that's super. Yeah, they're so good. And I mean the principle, the idea behind it, having a free 5K at a certain time, anyone can go along, anyone can do it. I just think it's such a great thing. So to see it spread, and I hope it really takes off and becomes even bigger in the US,
Oh, absolutely,
too.
yeah.
That'd be amazing.
I would love to, I want to talk to the people who established that one, and see if I can, because I'm maybe 35, 40 minutes north of the city here in North Carolina. And if it's not a ton of work, I would love to be part of a team that even brings it to my small town here, is just so that people don't have to commute to the city to do it. I would just love to see this whole parkrun community grow here in the States. It's just such a wonderful resource.
That'd be so good. And I think it's amazing that, people use it for lots of different things too. Because, you see some people there, like flying off, going, doing a ridiculously fast 5K. Others who are doing it just to, like some walk it as well. They use it as park walk, and they try and walk it faster and faster every week. We see people with dogs doing it, people with buggies. And actually, yeah, often get overtaken by the people in, they're pushing a buggy, and then they're like flying past you as well, which is pretty impressive.
Oh, yeah, amazing. Yeah, people. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
it's just a
great
great
way.
community feel.
You just beat me to the punch. Yeah, exactly. Once people become, addicted to running, and it becomes such a big part of their life, they always want to see more people doing it. And it's such a huge benefit. Like we started this conversation, but physically, mentally, emotionally, it's just such a boon. And I think parkrun by itself has the ability to really spread the popularity of running, because it is so inclusive, because it doesn't cost people to get started, and it's just a wonderful thing. So yeah, I'll be reporting back about my parkrun experiences for sure. And thank you for
I'll be good to hear.
Yeah, I just can't wait, cannot wait. But Ben, just to bring it back to you here, this is, after all, your subscriber spotlight. So I'm hoping that you can share however many favorite pieces of advice for other runners, just, people who are just kind of starting to find their way. What would you recommend they think about?
The first thing I would say is that running is not one thing. There are so many different kinds of running that you can do, and I think the important thing is not to think that you have to do something because like other runners are doing it. Like for instance, like progressing up the distances. And this might sound slightly hypocritical, because I'm someone who's very much done that. I've gone from 5K to 10K to half to marathon, ultra. But I would say to those who are starting out that there's no set path that you have to do. There's no necessities. Just think about what you like, what you enjoy, and also what you want to get from it ultimately. So that's the first thing I would say. Like, don't think there's anything you have to do or don't have to do. And, because some people want to go for times, and some people want to go for distances. Other people want to meet up with their friends several times a week and have a social run. So I think just think about like what you want to get from it. I think that's the first thing. Aside from that, like if it's something you want to get good at, then think about things like consistency, and just making sure you've got a good rhythm in your training. So yeah, I think those two things.
That's wonderful, great advice. And that's, as a coach, the consistency thing is always the first thing I preach to anybody. If you want to see improvement, don't worry about getting faster. Just run regularly. And that's all it takes. Great answers, Ben. And I want to give you an opportunity to share all the different social media outlets that you have, because, as I said when we first got started, and even before we were rolling tape, I really enjoy your content. I think it's high quality stuff. I think it's entertaining. You're bringing a lot of value to the running community. So I'm hoping just let everybody know where they can find you on the different social media outlets, and everything that you say, I will share in the show notes below so that people can just click to find you.
Super. Thank you. So the channel is Time on Feet. So if you just search Time on Feet on YouTube, that'll come up. And then my Instagram is Time on Feet Runs.
Thank you, Ben. And thank you for this conversation. It was really, really thought-provoking. It was entertaining, and I really enjoyed speaking with you. So thank you for being here.
Thanks so much, Paul. Yeah, thanks for having me. Much appreciated.
Yeah, it was a great talk. So yeah, I can't wait to present it for everybody. So good stuff. Good stuff.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
Yeah, you too. Thanks.